They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What's up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host, Ian Gibson. How are you?
Good enough. Thank God the Lightning have been winning these last two games.
Yeah, I know. I just noticed they just actually won right before we started getting ready here today. So good on that. Thank God the Lightning are at least winning. So we'll talk about the USF game in a little bit, but let's talk first about this. So it's the Week 9 recap, and the first game we had on our list was the UCLA Indiana game, which was not a game at all. It was a complete blowout. Indiana is just a machine at this point. They are just running through everyone. I don't see many teams stopping them at this point. Really, the only team that I see maybe like causing them a little bit of issue will be Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and then potentially playoff games. But outside of that, they have Maryland, Penn State, who fired their coach, Wisconsin, who's on the verge of firing their coach, and Purdue. So, Indiana is just a wrecking ball at this point. They honestly didn't even have a huge game from Mendoza here. He only had 168 yards, but he had 3 TDs. Hemby had a really good game. Nico for UCLA struggled, 2 interceptions. It was, there was I know there was a return for a touchdown. I think it was a pick 6. And then there was it was bad. Like UCLA couldn't do anything. They had 2 conversions out of 11, which is terrible. In Indiana, conversely, was 14 of 16 on conversions. That's nearly like 90%. That's insane amount of conversions. You're not going to win many games when you're giving up 90% conversion rate to your opposing offense. There's not much to say about UCLA on this one. I'm sorry, Richard. It is what it is. Indiana's just better. I know that there was some chatter from UCLA fans about, hey, we might upset them. I didn't think it was really going to happen. I know we predicted that UCLA was going to lose, but I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I was hoping just decent output on offense, and they really couldn't do anything. But your thoughts, Ian, we'll move on.
Yeah, and the other thing is that Indiana just kind of proved that they are still kind of in a class in their own right now. Even when they didn't really have their best game, every other facet was just clicking on all cylinders. And yeah, by first quarter, it was 35 to or at halftime 35-3 or something like that. It was and over. Yeah, IU was just kind of running away with it. And like you said, the third down conversion was the most telling thing because they were in those third and manageable situations, and UCLA just could not get off the field. I saw too Indiana was dominating time of possession, so they didn't even have enough time to score. So Indiana, again, just showed they were the better team. There's really nothing you can do about that.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. We're gonna be quick tonight, guys. It's just it's a slow show because of the limited games. I know there's a ton of news because of the coaches stuff and whatever, and potentially Brian Kelly might be fired, but whatever. I'm not really going to get into it. We'll talk more about LSU later, but the Florida stuff, it's ongoing. It's going to be fluid for several weeks, so there's not really a need to get into it tonight again. So we're just going to talk about these games. We'll get over this, and then we'll have more to talk on Wednesday. So next game we have is Ole Miss, Oklahoma. This game actually was really good. When I watched the recap, the 20-minute recap, I'm like, man, this was back and forth, and I didn't realize that Oklahoma had a lead later in the game and actually looked like they were in this game. I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking trash about John Mateer, saying he couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, but he was making some really good plays on some of the ones that I saw. So I'm like, I didn't see the whole game, so I didn't see all the incompletions, but I saw several really good completions, and he obviously kept them in this game. You know, it was a one-score game even to the very end. So credit to Oklahoma there. You know, their defense is very stout, but you know, Ole Miss's offense is a machine right now. They're able to put up points on basically anybody. 431 yards for Ole Miss. You know, 11 of 21 on conversion, so over 50% clip. They held Oklahoma to 5 of 14 on conversions. You know, it was the one fumble in the game that really kind of not necessarily changed everything. It was just one fumble, but you know, Lacey had a really good game.
Yeah.
Chambliss again, like honestly, man, like it's crazy. Chambliss was in Division II last year, was a backup coming in for Austin Simmons, comes in and just like lights it up. I think why Chambliss is getting the playing time, I've seen other people talk about it, how his ability to run the ball, like QB draws and like RPO stuff, that really kind of like changes the pace and like makes a real difference in how defenses play, you know, an offense like Ole Miss, because Austin Simmons isn't the most athletic guy, but Trinidad is really really speedy. So like he can get those first downs when they need to. And, you know, he had 53 yards on the ground. You know, Lacey had 78 yards and 2 TDs. Watkins had a really good game for Ole Miss too. He had a lot of big catches. You know, this team is really good. Like, I don't know if they're better than last year because there was a lot of really amazing pieces that Ole Miss had on their team, like Judkins and Nolan. But you know, I think as a collective, maybe they're better as like a whole working together. But your thoughts on this, Ian, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, and in this game too, it was real back and forth, and it showed how great of a win this was for Ole Miss because they were like, this game was slipping away from them, and they found a way to just stick to the game plan. They didn't panic, didn't crumble, especially in that environment in Norman. That was an easy place where it could have gotten away from them. That third quarter too, because Oklahoma was scoring like 16, almost 16 unanswered points. So that was, you know, really tough for Ole Miss to come back from. But again, they shut them out in the fourth quarter. Defense stood tall. They got that touchdown from Chambliss, and then the field goal kind of iced it in the end. But Ole Miss, that was a really good win. Mateer, definitely a good bounce back game, over 200 yards passing. But in the end, I felt like Ole Miss just, you know, out-athleted and kind of made the bigger plays when necessary than Oklahoma.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to add was that fumble actually was pretty important because Satania on a punt return that looked pretty good and was going to put them in position to score, fumbled it, and that's where it was. And then Ole Miss had a big play to Watkins and then went to a field goal and made it that 8-point game. So it was kind of important in the grand scheme of the game. Any other thoughts? And then we're going to move on.
No, just Ole Miss, you know, keeps the train rolling. They're making a really good case for being a team to jump into the playoffs.
Okay, next one we have is Virginia UNC. This game was kind of boring, honestly, because it was 10-10 at half, and it was like, you know, just back and forth of like nothing really going on for long stretches. They go to overtime. Virginia puts up a good drive, scores. They go up 17-10. North Carolina is able to counter and score, but instead of just kicking the 1 point and like continuing on overtime, Bill Belichick in his infinite wisdom goes for 2 to try to end it right there. I don't know. Maybe he thought that was it. That it's probably the best decision because, you know, it's one play. Like anything can happen on one play. You give your team a chance considering, you know, Virginia is a better team. So, and you're at home. it was not that far off. The guy was like trying. He was right there at the pylon, had a shot at it. He was real close, and he just didn't get in. But you know, Virginia holds on. This is the third overtime game in like a month that Virginia has survived. It's been they're very lucky winning these games because most people that like, you know, like overtime is not kind to most people. It's a very big crapshoot. You know, you're just kind of fortunate if you get some of these wins. And now they're 3-0 through them. So, and they're 7-1, I believe, on the year, and they have, you know, everything to play for in the ACC and potentially playoff spot. So, Virginia, you know, in this game, it wasn't pretty, but they got it done again. Chandler Morris didn't put up great stats, had a bad pick. But conversely, North Carolina is just a bad team. And Gio Lopez had 2 really bad interceptions, and they didn't really do a ton, North Carolina, for most of this game. So credit to Virginia for surviving a road game. You know, the rest of the year for them looks like Cal on the road, which is kind of tough because they're going to have to travel. Wake Forest seems to be resurgent. Duke's going to be tough. And then Vautech has fired their coach. So we'll see. I mean, they should be able to beat Cal and Vautech pretty easily. And then really the Wake Forest Duke games will be what decide their fate. But your thoughts on this one, Ian?
Cardiac Cavs, man, because not only are they 3 overtimes, the last one was the safety against Washington State. So literally the last, 4 games now? They've been one score last second, you know, clutching victory from the jobs to defeat type wins. And this was one of them. And this is the one thing. I know I bashed North Carolina, and rightfully so, but I will give Belichick credit on this one. I never am going to get upset with some coach that was going for the win. And that's what he did with the 2-point conversion, because he was probably smart enough going, look, we're probably not going to get another chance to do this again. So let's just go for the win now. But again, Virginia, I mean, again, playing with fire, but so far they're riding the lightning here. They have those 2 big games with Wake Forest and Duke. But yeah, the schedule is still, you know, everything's in front of them still. Yeah. But, you know, the ACC has kind of been topsy-turvy, so we'll see how it goes down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to play Miami. They don't have to play SMU. They don't have to play Georgia Tech. So, like, they've got – outside of that Louisville game, they really have had an easy ACC schedule. So, we'll see going forward. Okay, moving on to USF Memphis. I'll let you start, Ian, because I know you wrote that article, and we posted on haterradio.com. So, check out Ian's article about the game. But go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, and just echoing, you know, what I wrote there, because my emotions from that reaction article haven't really changed. It's very frustrating because, once again, this is one of the biggest games in USF's history, and they just couldn't get the job done again. And it was 31-17 going into the 4th quarter. And especially after that touchdown run from Franklin, you would have thought that would have been it. But, you know, I don't know if it was the injury to Schuler, but since that happened earlier in the game in the first half, the defense was doing a really good job holding Memphis. But second half was just a complete disaster for the defense. They could not get off the field. There were so many 3rd and 4th down situations, especially that 4th and 8 when it was that drive that, you know, gave Memphis the lead. Just everybody was out of position, just favoring one side of the edge, and it was just frustrating. But what it was after halftime, Memphis only didn't score on one drive, and it was a missed field goal. Yeah. And they crossed the 50 every single drive, and you cannot have that as USF's defense. They didn't force, you know, they got one turnover. They didn't, you know, they didn't force a turnover. Yeah, they didn't force a turnover, which was their bread and butter. They didn't, you know, it was just very disappointing is no other way to put it. I will give credit where it is due. Obviously, Memphis, they could have easily looked at 31-17, literally looking down the barrel of a shotgun after an upset loss to UAB, but they kept their playoff and conference championship hopes alive. 17 unanswered, and then, you know, Lewis's performance was fantastic. Byron Brown had a great game too. Not going to take anything away from him, but Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can come up with is it's inexcusable because this wasn't a game where it was back and forth, back and forth. USF had this game for 3 quarters, and in the most important quarter, they faltered. And that's what I said too, is they need to play a full 4 quarters. And if you're going to pick a quarter, don't pick the fourth to pack it in. And that's exactly what happened. And I will discuss it like I did in the reaction. If this decision is squarely on goalish, you have got to take the points there in the third quarter. I understand you're aggressive. I understand your offense was humming. But if you get that field goal, instead of going down the field needing a touch or, going for the field goal to tie it, the game's already tied. And not needing to have to do another pass to maybe get it better for Dramatica that results in a holding call that makes it a 53-yard field goal to possibly win it. So again, it's inexcusable to lose that game the way they did. Their playoff hopes are pretty much dead in the water. I don't see them, if everything goes their way still, I don't see them still making it in. And now any chance that a home conference championship game is lost, and of course now fate is out of their hands now that Memphis, Navy, and Tulane have leapfrogged them. Of course, a lot of those teams are going to be playing each other. But now we're going to have to be Memphis fans pulling for them beating Tulane, and USF takes care of business with Navy. But again, it's frustrating because if they just got this game, the path was clear. Yeah. And now potentially, once again, a great team might not even make the conference championship again for USF.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things from this game. I of course went to Disneyland with friends again, and of course it was another terrible game for one of our teams that we cover, and 2 here with UCLA. And the first time was we went to Disneyland, and it was the Arkansas game, and that was pretty much your beginnings of the end of Billy Napier. And but regardless, the other thing was my brother texted me when you said that it was 31-17. He texted me when that happened. Like, he's like, "Go Bulls." And I'm like, I didn't really get a chance to respond to him because we were doing stuff. And I was like keeping track of the game. And I'm just like, okay. And it's one of those things because it's like, Memphis is a good offense. They showed it against Arkansas. Like, they were down, I don't know, at least 10 or 12 in that game, and they came back. Like, they're capable of putting together quick explosive drives, making things difficult for the opposing team's defense, and they did that. They put USF on their heels. Brendan Lewis did a really good job. Like, honestly, he was the difference in that game. Like, the fourth quarter drive, like, he couldn't be stopped, and USF had no answer. And I don't know what you do in that situation. It's like, if they're going to score, you're better off just letting them score as quick as possible so you have more time. Kind of like what South Carolina did. They didn't have enough time in that game to really do anything. Yeah. So it's like, if you're going to let them score, you got to let them score quickly so that you can get the ball with plenty of time to do something about it. When that instant happened in the third quarter where it was 4th and 4 and it's close, I literally was watching it at that point, and I put my phone in my pocket, and I was almost assured of it in my brain. I'm like, oh, we got 3 points. We're up 2 scores again. And you're right, because not only does that make it 2 scores at that point, but then it likely, when they score the touchdown with Franklin, I'm almost positive that makes that 3 scores. And if you're 3 scores going into the fourth quarter, you're almost assured of winning the game. It was already a high percentage when they were up 2 scores. So if it would have been 34-17, the percentage of them losing that game would have been very low. So I'm disappointed they didn't go for it. I don't know why. I don't know what the difference would have been there, scoring a field goal or getting the touchdown. I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking. It was basically a gimme field goal. Nico would have hit that.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I don't think you mentioned it. The talk about the pass play on third down with 10 seconds left, when he, puts Byram back into dropping back, and the offensive line, like every one of them held. And like that
I
was
did
kind
mention
of
that, and I was like, dude.
yeah. And it's honestly, it's like if they had just run the ball there because they had the timeout, they would have positioned it better to have the spot where Nico would have wanted it. It would have been a 35-yard field goal, maybe 42, somewhere around there. And we would have kicked the field goal, went to overtime. Who knows what would have happened? Like, the offense was playing good all game. There's like no reason why we couldn't have scored more points in overtime. But I don't know. It's a shame. And I wish, I like Nico barely missed that one. Like it was like, it looked like it was going good at first, and then probably the wind took it a little left. And like, it is what it is, man. It's a long field goal. 52 is not a gimme in any way. Like, even NFL kickers, miss 52 plus yard field goals. So, it's a shame that it like had to rely on that, but it is what it is. I still feel like the offense is good enough to win out the rest of these games. The defense needs to get better. They didn't get the turnovers, like you said, and I think that's going to be crucial going forward. I don't know. Did Schuler even come back in the game, or was he?
Not that I
out?
saw. I just saw that he got hurt. Yeah.
So like, that's important. Like, if Schuler's not there next week, next couple of games, it could be kind of detrimental. We'll see. USF is. As far as their schedule, we'll just go over it briefly and then we'll move on. So they're 6-2. They've got 4 games left. They've got UTSA November 6th. So they got the bye week next week, and then Navy, UAB, and Rice. So next 2 games are huge. They gotta win. They gotta win these ones. Luckily, this one UTSA is at home, so they can get some like home cooking going and like really like get stuff together there and like take the week off, trying to heal everyone up a little bit, because that Navy game is going to be huge. Like, that literally is it. If they don't win the Navy game, they have no shot. So we'll see. But very disappointing. This was like the biggest game in USF's history, basically. And to be up 31-17 and to lose it was really rough. And it's a shame, because it's like, I felt like, when that score was there and my brother's texting me, I'm like, okay, we've got something. But I'm always, in the back of my mind, I'm always like, you never know. There's always something going to happen. And
we call it's like I said, battered bull syndrome. We've been through this before.
Oh yeah. All the fans were tweeting on Saturday. They were like, this is the same old South Florida. They said, and it's like, it just seems like it's all this stuff always seems to happen with USF. It's just really is a shame. Okay. Moving on, we're going to move through these relatively quickly. The next one we have is, what do we got? Alabama, South Carolina. Kind of a miraculous win here for Alabama. They were losing in this game late into the game. They had a long drive to score to tie it, but South Carolina was moving the ball pretty well against Alabama, and they looked to like, be on a drive to potentially win it there at the end. The fans were like lining up on the sidelines, and then Sellers fumbles it. And, like we said, Alabama was driving, and then South Carolina let them score to get the ball back. But that was it. It was just not enough time to score a touchdown in like 40 seconds when, South Carolina's offense is not the best. So, South Carolina now is, I believe, 3-5. And like, if you had told anyone that at the beginning of the year, I don't think anybody would have believed you, considering how much like hype people put into Sellers. I gotta sneeze. Sorry. I don't think I've ever sneezed. I don't think I've ever sneezed on the show. Like, literally, like, since we've been doing live shows. That's kind of funny. Okay. No, but 3-5 in this one. Their schedule is still rough after this because they still have, I believe, A&M and Ole Miss. Just brutal schedule, and Clemson. I don't see more than one win left. And they play Coastal Carolina. They'll probably get that one, but just, I mean, they may end up 3-7 or 3-9 or like 4-8. And that's brutal, man. 4-8. Like after going 9-3 last year. Oof. Shane Beamer, I like tweeted out a photo of him. I don't know if you saw it, Ian. It was like his face he made on the sideline. I'm like, I think he knows. I think he knows he's getting fired. Like, because there's like, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know what you do. Like, as a coach, he's never really had a great year. Like 9-3 was his best year so far. And I don't think he's going to be able to match that the next couple of years. Maybe he can. I don't know. But like, it doesn't seem like it. Like, I think it was just kind of lightning in the bottle last year. They had a really good defense. There were a lot of like stud players on that side of the ball. And now it's like, they're really not there anymore. And like that team kind of struggled on defense. They played a good game on Saturday against Alabama, but I don't know. What are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and the other thing is South Carolina, you know, they had this absolute gauntlet of a schedule. But in their defense, a lot of these games, besides the Oklahoma game, they only lost by 10 to LSU. They only lost by 9 to Missouri, I think. And then this one, they were hanging there with Alabama, and we were talking about how much of a heater Alabama was on. The one key of this one is that run game has been MIA for Alabama for a while, for now 2 games in a row, and you cannot have that keep going in the SEC right now. Ty Simpson, though, has been as good as advertised after that Florida State game, so he was really doing a good job carrying them, but the run game just was kind of anchoring Alabama's offense. But yeah, I mean, kind of similar to last year with South Carolina and Alabama and Tuscaloosa, where it came down to a few lucky bounces that went Alabama's way. But after that fumble, they scored the touchdown. It was honestly after the fumble, I knew Bama was going to win. But like I say with a lot of these teams, I mean, you can only play with fire for so long.
All right, moving on to Missouri Vanderbilt. So game day was at this game. It really, the play of the game was that goal line stand where Perbula gets his ankle like destroyed.
Yeah.
It was kind of a gnarly injury. He had an air cast as he was leaving the game on the golf cart. They don't score. I think they fumbled it, right? Didn't they fumble it on that play? And then Vanderbilt got the ball.
Yeah.
And like it was pretty much the difference in the game because Missouri actually was the better team for most of this, but because of those like 4th down stops and like missed field goals, Vanderbilt just stayed in this game. And credit to Pavia because he made the right moves and like was scoring when they got close and made the difference in the game. And Pavia didn't do a ton. Like it wasn't like he put up a ton of yards. He had 129 yards passing, 10 of 19. But he does enough to win. This Vanderbilt defense is really good, obviously holding a good team like Missouri to 10 points. And, you got Young and Alexander for Vanderbilt running the ball, doing quite well. I don't know. This team, I don't think they can beat, they obviously didn't beat Alabama, and they probably can't beat a team like Georgia, and they probably won't beat a team like Texas A&M. But I think everyone else in the SEC right now, I think they can, hold a candle to us. So, they're like a second-tier SEC team right now, which for them is huge because they've never been that, ever since I've watched Vanderbilt football. And, I feel like with this loss, it probably takes Drinkwitz out of, major contention for being a coach somewhere at a big program. So, Missouri's probably stuck with him, but, whatever. It works there for them with him. Your thoughts on this one, Ian?
Defense for Vandy was really the MVP of this game. And like we've mentioned with a lot of these teams, Pavia and that offense certainly gets a lot of credit. but the defense has been coming up clutch in a lot of these games, especially the LSU game the week before. But yeah, that goal line stand, and even with Prebula out, they were able to stop because Missouri was still relying on the run a lot, and they did get a lot of traction. But when it came down, they didn't break.
Yep.
And this is just one of those instances where football just isn't fair because Missouri really did kind of outplay Vandy. They just couldn't get the big plays that Vanderbilt did, and especially towards the fourth quarter in crunch time, Vandy got the stop, and then they, got the touchdown with, I think it was like a minute 52 left in the game.
Yeah.
And then they shut down Missouri from having any chance of tying it. So huge win for Vandy.
What I forgot to mention, we need to talk about that last play.
It was
Missouri still had that last play, and it was like the guy, nothing he could do because he was catching the ball, but the defenders were pulling him back just enough, and he couldn't even move. So he's bending down, and the ball is right here, and then the line. So he couldn't push back enough to get over the line, and it was just enough that because they were more trying to bat the ball down.
Yeah.
And then when it came over, they just happened to hit him so he couldn't move back, and he just goes down and he kneels on the ground, it puts his knee down, so he was down, and that was it. And I'm like, damn, man, that is about as close as you're going to get on a last second play where you're right at the goal line and not get in. That is crazy. But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and I think you pointed out the other thing to note is hockey fans know this. That last play when they were reviewing it felt was it when they review if the puck crossed the line for a goal? It literally looked like that. It was just a matter of inches and it just didn't break the plane. But that play was really a good antithesis for Missouri, where they were just literally so close, but they just couldn't get into the end zone and punch it in. But it's a tough loss, but especially without Prebula, Vandy, buckled down and they got the win, and they keep on running forward here.
Okay, moving on to BYU, Iowa State. I'm telling you, man, this BYU team is like a wrecking ball as well. Just a very fundamentally sound team that does things well. They tackle well. Offensively, you got two amazing receivers, Chase Roberts and Kingston, and they just make plays all day. Bear Bachmeier, a freshman, just playing like a 3 or 4 year vet. And this team, he had 307 yards, Bachmeier. That's a huge game. They forced Rocco Becht into 3 interceptions. Rocco Becht had a decent game outside of those 3 interceptions, but if you have 3 interceptions, you're more than likely losing your game. And Carson Hansen for Iowa State had a huge game. He had a bunch of huge runs, couple touchdowns. I'm telling you, man, BYU, no one's talking about him. There is no chatter about this team at all nationally. And I don't get it. I guess it's because they play a lot of their games later in the night, and so most people are not paying attention to them. But they beat Utah, a good team. Iowa State is not a bad team. They've got a couple of games coming up here in the rest of the year. The Texas Tech game, it's literally next week, 2 weeks. But dude, I'm telling you, Texas Tech, BYU, I don't know why this is not getting a lot of hype. It needs to, because that game is going to be a monster game. I'm excited because I don't know why Texas Tech is only 13, I guess because that loss, but still, I feel like Texas Tech is one of the best teams in the country. And these two teams, it's going to be a battle. So they play TCU after that in Cincinnati. So they got three games in a row here that are going to be a test. But your thoughts, Ian, on BYU and Iowa State?
It was looking like it was Iowa State's game early. The end of the first quarter, they were up 10, 17-7, and Beck was kind of finding his guys. But man, 4 turnovers overall in the game, you're not going to win a game. Just in general, you're giving up the ball like that. The 3 interceptions to BYU was just all over them defensively after that. And guys like Parker Kingston, the wide receiver for BYU, I think he had the 2 touchdowns, and it was over 100 yards receiving. Just they had no answers for that attack, especially when thrown to the outside, which is, Iowa State very well known for the defense. So they were able to, kind of crack the code there. But BYU keeps it rolling. Like I said, though, from last year, they have everything to play for. They just got to make sure they don't, trip over and break the glass ball.
Okay, next one we got is Illinois, Washington. Demond Williams. If you guys don't know who Demond Williams is, the kid was like doing amazing things last year. We didn't really hear too much about him because it was like they were like 6-7, I believe. So they were kind of like, not really in the public eye too much in the national media. But man, they're, I think, 6-2 right now. And they just, this game was a lot closer, like at points. And then Washington kind of took over in the second half. But no, like Demond, huge game, 280 yards, 4 TDs. Denzel Boston for Washington had a huge game, 153 yards. Yeah, he's looking good. Demond also put up 66 yards on the ground. So 356 yards. No, 300. I can't do the math right now. 346 yards. But still, huge game from him. Washington does enough on defense to stifle Altmaier. I think Altmaier had 2 interceptions, and he had like another one called back because of a roughing the passer penalty. So he had a rough game. But they were 9 of 12 on conversions, and so was Illinois. It was really those turnovers were quite the difference in the game. And, Washington outgained them, though, 449 to 337. So Washington, a team that you need to be looking at. I don't think they're going to get to the Big Ten championship game. But if they keep winning, they have a real shot at getting to the playoff. They have Wisconsin next week or in 2 weeks. And then they've got Purdue, which should be an easy game. And then the one after that is UCLA, which I don't know what UCLA is going to show up as in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully they can rally from that loss. And then the rivalry game against Oregon. So they got 2 easy ones. And then it should be a tough one against UCLA if they kind of bounce back from that loss to Indiana and then that Oregon game. So they got a tough tail end of their schedule. But you could legitimately see them at least at 9-3, potentially 10-2. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and Washington has definitely kind of been a sleeper kind of rebound team from last year. They had a rough go of it in the Big Ten, especially compared to Oregon. But when your only 2 losses are so far this year, Ohio State and Michigan, and you were just boat racing everybody else, including a pretty good Illinois team that beat USC, that's pretty good. Yeah. And yeah, they were definition of a second half team. They had a great second half in this game. And, Boston had over, like you said, 100 yards, and Williams another fantastic game, 4 touchdowns total. Really, all the momentum is on Washington, finishing out this year. For Illinois, I mean, Altmaier did everything he could, but again, that rush, there isn't really much of a rushing attack to speak of for Illinois, and it's becoming a very one-dimensional offense. There has to be some adjustments moving forward to finish the season stronger, because it can't just all be Altmaier winning these games.
Yeah. Okay. You got any more thoughts on this one?
No, just, Washington doing a good job. Like I said, after last season, it was very tough for them in the Big Ten. Now they're, running through a lot of these teams. When your only 2 losses are to the kind of pillars of the Big Ten, you're having a pretty good year. Okay.
Moving on to the big news, because it just came out while we've been on. LSU Texas A&M game. Texas A&M wins. What did they win? 49-25, and LSU, as of like half an hour ago, fired Brian Kelly. So Brian Kelly is out. Came in the same year as Billy Napier, and it's somewhat fitting, in that like coaching carousel in that year. It was Brian Kelly to LSU, Lincoln Riley to USC, and then Billy Napier to Florida. And now Kelly's gone from LSU. Billy Napier's been fired from Florida. James Franklin has been fired from Penn State. I don't think USC is going to fire Lincoln Riley no matter what happens this year. I think there's still a lot to be played, so that's still up in the air. But Brian Kelly coached a Heisman winning quarterback who was the number 2 pick in the draft. They were, not an amazing team because they had seemed like every year 3 or 4 losses, but they were not a terrible team either. They were not like Billy Napier's teams where Billy, the best year he had was 8-5, and every other year was basically 5-7 or 6-7 or whatever. This definitely throws a wrench into the gear for Florida as far as their coaching search. I think they'll be fine as far as it goes with who they're going to go after. I know that LSU wants to be in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes, but I don't know if Lane is going to leave Ole Miss. It seems there's only 2 places he would go if he left Ole Miss, and that would probably be 1, Alabama, because he had a great time there, and you could see him really do great things there too. Or 2, probably Florida with his connections to the family. His first wife is John Reeves's daughter, right? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
And so there's a connection to Florida there. They went on their first date in Gainesville. He had a connection to Florida because of his dad. Monty Kiffin was at Tampa for a very long time. So he definitely has, and he was at FAU. So he's recruited Florida before. So he has, a sweet spot for Florida. And he also idolized Steve Spurrier when he was, growing up in the 90s. That's why he wears the visor. So there's a lot that he likes about Florida and that fits for him. Personality, offensive play acumen, all that. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But as far as Brian Kelly, I don't think he's going to go to LSU. I don't think Lane Kiffin's going to go there. And who are they going to hire? They're going through right now. I'm hearing a $50 million plus buyout for their coach. I don't know what they end up doing. Penn State had quite a buyout as well. So all these teams are really struggling with paying all these buyouts. Luckily, Billy Napier's buyout wasn't as severe because he was already 4 years in, and it was I think it was 20 or 30 million, something like that. I don't know. Either way, I think that Florida's in a good position. I think LSU has a good roster, so they're not that far from being contenders. But I think Florida right now, I feel they're in a better position with their roster, and I feel if they can make the right hire, they can really make the difference here. But I don't really have much thoughts on the game because it was a blowout, and it's it being the end of a coaching era. I don't really have much because it's really the team kind of quits on you. You really can't make much out of it. A&M looks good. There's no doubt about that. They are a good team and they deserve a top 5, top 3 ranking that they have. I totally justified. But when you have a team like LSU that knew that potentially their coach could be fired, and then they're just halfway through just kind of fell apart, it really kind of hurts your justification for this being a even-handed game. But your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, and how wrong was I about this upset? Wrong enough that it got Brian Kelly fired.
I forgot. It was Ian's upset pick, and then the guy gets fired.
That's how. That's. I don't think we've ever had a prediction go that wrong that badly.
Oh, brutal.
I saw that and I was like, "Oof, man, that's hilarious." But hey, like I said, it gets a chance to laugh at Brian Kelly again. Well, not anymore. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of fitting because going into that cycle, LSU did look like the better, coming out of it better with Brian Kelly jumping ship. You want to talk about a team who won that? it's like a winning a trade. Notre Dame. I mean, you fall up into Marcus Freeman because Brian Kelly jumps ship to Baton Rouge and he gets fired. And Marcus Freeman was in the national championship last year. It's kind of insane. But all in all,
he's not even 40 years old. I don't think.
Yeah,
he's younger than me, and like the guy is like, I don't know what he's going to end up doing because like maybe if the Ohio State job comes open at some point, he would jump for that. But like, I mean, at this point, he's locked in, and like they're in a good spot, and that was a great trade. Like they got rid of him. He was always competitive and like had 10, 11 win seasons, but he could never do anything in the playoffs. He never beat anybody. Marcus Freeman, first time in the playoffs, gets to the championship game and like looks great almost in all those games. So like, I don't know. But you're keep going. I didn't want to interrupt you much.
No, you're all good. Just, that game did look like, the swan song of a coach about to be fired. Total domination by A&M, especially Marcel Reed having a fantastic game. And it's very rare that you see LSU Death Valley at night quiet going into the fourth quarter. And that's something A&M did, which is insanely impressive. So great win for A&M. Obviously, now LSU jumps into the sinking ship with Florida and Penn State. Now trying to find a new coach, but all in all, A&M's staying dry and looking pretty.
Yeah, and like for the rest of their schedule, they've got Texas at the end, the South Carolina game we talked about earlier. Missouri should be a tough game. It's in Columbus. Is it Columbia or Columbus, Missouri? Columbia, sorry. Okay, because it's Columbia for both South Carolina and Missouri. Okay, so yeah, Columbia, and maybe Missouri's ready to go. I don't know. Purbuella's probably done for the year. I mean, if you had a cast like that I haven't heard, but I'm assuming he's done for the year, so we'll see. But then they have Samford as well. So really that Texas game in Austin is going to be the determinant factor. But even if they lose that game, if they don't go to the SEC championship game, they at least get in the playoff minimum. So we'll see. This is very interesting for them. I think A&M, they didn't have to play Alabama. They didn't have to play Georgia. They didn't have to play Vanderbilt. I think if they play one of those teams, I'm not so sure that they're going to be favored. Maybe Vanderbilt, but like Georgia and Alabama, I think those two would more than likely be favored in that game. And then like some of the Big Ten teams, because they might have like a good favorable spot in that first round game they play, or potentially into the 1-3-4 game. But I don't know. We'll see. A&M in a good position. I just don't love Marcel Reed. I'm not the biggest fan of his. I don't think he's super accurate. I think that he, didn't look that great against Florida, and Florida, was sputtering in that game. Billy got fired the next week, but if like a better offense, they probably win that game. But let's move on. Last two games, we've got Colorado, Utah. It was a blowout. This game was never close. It was like, I think it was like 43-0 at the half. Yeah. And Utah really called off the Dogs. Bird Ficklin, I've never even heard of this guy. Got a crazy name. And he went off in this game. And, Colorado, I think Colorado had like negative 18 yards at the half.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous. But your thoughts on this one, because there's not much to really talk about here.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I mean, that was just a total domination. It was the equivalent of a seal versus a shark, pretty much. I think it was Utah had over 400 yards compared to Colorado. It was like 580 to like 120 or something. Yeah, and it was all Utah, the whole way. I mean, you want to talk about, taking your frustrations after losing to your most hated rival. Yeah. Unfortunately, Colorado had to go into Salt Lake City and feel the wrath. But great win for Utah. They keep it, at least keep the vibes high. Now they got a big matchup with Cincinnati, Big 12 matchup coming up. But for Colorado, I mean, I don't know what else you could have done there.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it seems likely that the Dion experiment is probably over. But yeah, for Utah, Cincinnati at home in Salt Lake City, then Baylor on the road, then Kansas State at home, and then Kansas on the road. So it's not an easy road, but we'll see. I mean, they've got a shot. Like, they're right there in the standings, and if teams mess up, they're right there to take advantage of it. But BYU, like I said, is undefeated. They'd have to get 2 losses for Utah to jump them. But even then, I don't think they can, because they have 2 conference losses. They would need 3 to jump them, but they'd have to jump someone else essentially. So right now, like you said, the Cincinnati game becomes huge. Okay, Ian, go ahead with your G5 game of the week. G5 Gibson game of the week.
You want to talk about a team making a statement for their conference? San Diego State did that, shutting out Fresno State, and just, they got 2 interceptions off the game, off Conklin, the quarterback from Fresno State. They had over 100 yards. They dominated in time of possession. And all in all, just San Diego State. I mean, it wasn't a pretty, shutout. I mean, 23-0. But now with them, this was the last really tough team for at least a little bit. I mean, obviously with the Mountain West, a lot of things can happen. But games with like Wyoming, Hawaii, and then the Boise State game, obviously Boise State would be the toughest one. But even if they lose that, they would still have an edge over UNLV. So now the path is clear for San Diego State to go to the Mountain West Conference Championship. And they did that emphatically, a 23-0 win. Great win for the Aztecs. And, for Fresno State, that was their chance to really stay in the hunt for the Mountain West. But now with 2 losses, it's kind of dead and buried.
Yeah, and I watched the recap. Like, that San Diego State was dominant. Like, Fresno State had no answer the whole game. And, I don't know much about San Diego State, but they looked really good in this. And, that Boise State game looms large. But like you said, even if they lose it, they still have the upper hand against UNLV. So let's move on to – actually, that's the show. So we're wrapping up here. That's it. Thanks for tuning in. You can check Ian's article about the USF Memphis game on haterradio.com. On all the socials, just type in Hater Radio to find us. Ian, what is your Twitter handle and your socials again?
Yeah, at Twitter, it's at G5Gibson, and at Instagram and YouTube, it's at G_Gator_G.
Okay, follow us there, like, subscribe, help us out with the algorithm. There's like 43 of y'all looking in right now. That's great. So craziness with this coaching carousel. It's just going to get weirder as we go on. Again, we won't know much until the season at least ends, and we know what happens with some of these coaching like potential hires and what their teams are going to do, like if they're going to the playoffs or not, because that depends if they're going to be able to get hired right away, because if they're in the playoffs and we won't see them for a few weeks, but anything's going to be possible here. It's a lot going on, but that is the show, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday. The show is every Sunday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and we'll talk to you guys then. All right, take care.